The first video game I ever played, far out, that's taking me back. You know what, I think it's going to be really embarrassing to reveal the fact that I'm a little baby and say it was Warcraft 2, I think.
I think it was probably Duke Nukem on like an old DOS PC. So, you know, the old 2D side-scroller one. BC Races. Let me think. There was a game with cavemen as well. I really can't remember the name of it.
Fury 3. It was like that ancient Microsoft thing where you flew around. Yeah, I think that's what it was, I think.
I think it might have been Treasure Island on the Spectrum, which came as a pack of 6 games. It was like a maze game where you could shoot swords at pirates.
The first computer that I ever had myself was a Spectrum 128, and on that, the first game I ever played was Thundercats, which is a really great platform game on the Spectrum. It's really good fun. I played it a lot.
That's a tough question, to be honest. Trying to think back all that time. I think it was the duck shooting game on the Nintendo. I forgot. Yes, Duck Hunt. That was it. Yeah. That was a fantastic game. I loved it so much. I seen a screenshot of it on Facebook the other day, actually, and I kind of reminisced. Which is great. I want to try and find that game again. It's fantastic.
But it wasn't the first game I ever played. That's probably like some ancient arcade game. I couldn't tell you for certain which one it would actually be, though. It's likely to be Pac-Man, I think.
Yeah. Another tough question. I think it'd have to be some sort of strategy game. So I'm really into strategy games. I think Tiberian Sun, Command & Conquer. Yeah.
I think I'd probably say Shenmue, perhaps.
Probably XCOM, actually. Or the original. The original XCOM was fantastic.
And I think I'm one of the few people that actually still thinks that Civilization 1 looks better than all the later Civilizations, the original Amiga version. So I played the original Amiga version for hours and hours on end. And I used to play it in one sitting, kind of like 7 or 8 hours in one go, all the way through from the very beginning to the very end. Yeah, it was so great. The later ones are really good as well, but I think there's a special place for me. It's got so much depth to it, and so many different sorts of games can come out of that one game. I think it's brilliant. It's a masterpiece.
What made me decide to work on video games was just the fact that with a video game you can create an experience for people that goes above and beyond most other art forms. I mean, a video game combines, what's the line in Indie Game the Movie? It combines all the sum total of all existing art into one big ball, and that's exactly what video games can do. And you can create experience for people that can give them just amazing insights into all sorts of things.
I don't know, I went to university to study computer game design, and I dropped out of that. And I thought as a dropout I would just kind of have to go the indie route. And amazingly it's turning out quite well in my first game, being here at Resd, and won Intel's Level Up recently.
It was kind of disillusionment with the mainstream games industry, maybe, because I worked in mainstream games for about 8 or 9 years, and I just wanted to do something where I was like responsible for everything on it and just could like have control and make what I wanted to make. So started making little prototypes, and eventually quit my job.
Well, really, I got into making games by accident, to be completely honest, because when I applied to go to uni, I actually wanted to do digital special effects and animatronics, but that course was full. So they said you can either do an animation or games course, and I chose games.
I always loved playing games, and I always loved programming as well, and the two just go together very naturally. So it does tail back to that Spectrum once again, which is a very, very programmable machine. So I used to love kind of writing games in BASIC and stuff on the Spectrum, and that's where I got started.
Directly before, I worked at just a generic like Windows application software house, doing CAD and CAM software, and then before that I worked in commercial games. Worked for QUBE in London, doing Battalion Wars, and some other bits and pieces.
I worked in Curry's electronics store. It was horrible. Yeah. It was just absolutely terrible. I have a problem with authority too, so when a boss telling me what to do was just horrible. So I thought, let's do something about that, and now that we've created this game, I'm my own boss, so that's a massive plus for me, to be honest. Working for myself, it's great.
After I dropped out of uni, I went and got a job in a factory because I was thinking I would have to spend like 5-10 years before I ever got noticed. So yeah, it's going really well. I've only been out of uni 1 year now, and
Already got a game?
yeah.
Right. Well, our first game was Uplink. So when I was making Uplink, I knew that we were going to have to do like a demo version, and I was trying to think about what we were going to actually call the demo version of Uplink. And I had this idea that we would call it the Introversion, which I thought would be, for some reason I thought this was hysterically funny at the time. And I had this note where I just wrote, yeah, we'll call it the Introversion, it'll be totally brilliant. And ultimately that actually became the company name. Introversion Software stems from that.
The idea behind the name is that we want to create games that take people to places they've never been before. And so that's the idea behind Unknown Worlds.
Every other game company seems to be like an adjunct noun studio, and I don't know, I feel they're really unrememberable. So Lawrie+Co is just fairly simple, just me and the co-part is to show that other people do work on it.
Name's Ed Key and David Kanaga, and it's called that because my name's Ed Key and I work with a guy called David Kanaga.
Well, before I made Uplink, I was working on this sort of like really crappy role-playing game construction kit. It was called Shadows, and it was like a sort of Japanese role-playing game construction kit. So you could make your own levels and stuff, and you could design your own characters and write scripts for it. And it never went anywhere. And I was going to give it away basically for free, and I eventually ended up abandoning the whole project in exchange for Uplink. Uplink actually just took over around that point.
It's called Amoeba's Revenge, and it was a game on the Spectrum where you had a little 8x8 pixel guy, and you had to get from the top of the screen to the bottom of the screen, avoiding randomly spawning green asterisks, and it was completely unfair and random.
There was a slot machine game, which was like the first game I ever finished and completed, and that did quite well. It was only a single button, no gameplay tactics to it. All you could do was spin. And that ended up getting, I think, about 100,000 plays, which I think is kind of embarrassing that it is such a terrible game. Yeah, in total it was played 1.5 years if you put all the gameplay minutes together. So yeah, I think hopefully, I almost feel guilty for taking like 1.5 man years out of society just to press spacebar.
So we have 8 people in our San Francisco office, and we have a lot of people scattered all over the world as well. In fact, our entire mapping team is here in the UK. So I could rattle off names, but I mean, we've got one guy who made our entire graphics engine. So the engine you've seen in gameplay here today, that was written by one guy. His name is Max Maguire, and we have a whole bunch of just awesome people. Our lead programmer is just fantastic, Brian Cronin, and the art director Corey Strader, and the list goes on of just people that on their own contribute so much, and coming together have managed to create an awesome team and create what we hope is a game that you wouldn't expect to see out of such a tiny team of people.
I have Nate, who is around here somewhere. He's gone. And I also have Chris Gehan from Hyperduck Soundworks doing the music. So I do all the artwork, all the gameplay, all the programming, and then have those two working on everything you hear.
So myself and Mark and Tom and Johnny, the original 4 members of Introversion, we were all at university together. We all did a computing degree at Imperial College in London. And we all lived together 1 year as well at university. And while we were at university, I was actually making Uplink at that time. Again, I didn't really have any plan of what to do with Uplink. I was just going to either give it away for free or charge like some kind of donate money if you want to type deal. And the other guys at the company, Mark and Tom, were much more sort of business-minded than me. And so they convinced me to try and start a company selling this one game that I'd made.
So it's Trash TV, and it's a puzzle platformer where you play as a television trapped inside a recycling centre, and you have a really wide array of guns to solve puzzles. And it's kind of a mix between Super Meat Boy and Super Crate Box. And the story of it is, at the moment, it's just a simple escape from the factory.
It's Proteus, and it's about kind of wandering around this weird, like, lo-fi pixel pastel world, exploring, finding creatures and ruins and strange magical effects, and there's discovering all these like audio bits of like dynamic music that's all attached to stuff.
So at the moment, I'm working on a game called Prison Architect. In Prison Architect, you build and manage a maximum security prison. You start with a totally empty plot of land, and you start building the beginnings of a prison and a canteen and a yard, and then prisoners start to arrive, and then you have to start hiring guards, and you gradually build up the security of your prison, and you start dealing with more and more serious issues. until eventually you're managing a massive prison with hundreds of prisoners all running around at once. It's like heavily inspired by Dwarf Fortress and Dungeon Keeper and classics like that.
The last indie game that I played, far out, there's a lot of them. I don't know, I guess before I got here, what was I playing? DayZ. I don't think that qualifies as indie, I guess, because of Armour, but I don't know. I mean, to tell you the truth, looking around this room right now in Res, there's just so many indie games I want to play, and I couldn't give you a specific one that would stand out in my mind because there's just so many, or it's doing different awesome things, you know, taking games beyond just the simple first-person shooter and doing crazy stuff.
Fabled Lands. I don't know if it's an indie game, but it's an open source implementation of this like a fighting fantasy book from the 90s. But it's like the Skyrim of fighting fantasy books, and you can like buy a ship and trade stuff and sail around, and it's completely mad. Fabled Lands is what it's called, and it's on SourceForge.
The last indie game I played, I think it was at the show, actually. I think it was Gunpoint. Yeah, it's a brilliant game, fantastic. You're this spy, this tiny spy. Well, it looks like a really small game anyway. It's 2D, really simple graphics, which is great. Some of the best games are with simple graphics anyway. And you have this awesome suit which you can just jump off buildings and you can get back up, and you can't get hurt from it basically. Your main objective is to hack computers in the game. You can rewire switches and elevators and doors to do whatever you want through this awesome mechanic in the game, which I find really, really unique and interesting.
The last one I played, other than mine, I think maybe Braid or Limbo. I replayed one of those recently.
Does DayZ count? I've been playing DayZ really seriously recently. I'm absolutely loving that, you know. But I've played about 70 hours of that so far. 70? Yeah, it's quite bad when I'm supposed to be working. I'm really hooked on it. That's my game of the moment for indie. Yeah.
I don't know. I'd say it's a blessing, yeah. I usually see unique stuff come out of indies, to be honest. So that's what I'd say, it's a blessing rather than a curse. Have you got an answer of a curse from anybody yet?
I've not had a curse yet.
No? Okay. Oh, that's good.
I'd say it's more of a blessing for sure. I don't know, it's all the little things I really like choosing my desk, my PC, everything like that. Because I do work at the moment as a freelance programmer for Honeyslug, who make PlayStation Vita games and mobile phone games. And work for them is really good. But it is really nice having the full creative control. And especially doing the artwork and the puzzles and the programming. It's really nice to have all three.
It's pretty ambivalent, really. Yeah, I've not had any backlash. I've not been called a hipster yet. Yeah, I'm sitting in my raincoat, you know, like no one thinks I'm cool, so.
I don't think it's particularly either. I think it's become a genre in its own right now, definitely. You know, when we started out, it didn't really mean anything to be an indie. And it's, you know, these days it can mean a whole load of different types of companies fall under the heading of indie. It's not enough just to say that you're indie anymore, I don't think. I think there's all kinds of different types of indie. I don't really know what sort of indie Introversion is, but I certainly think we are indie. But I don't know, I don't really think of it in terms of being a blessing or a curse, to be honest. I think it's just another name.
It's a combination, and it's also difficult because the definition can get very blurry. For example, you know, if a company receives a bit of funding but still stays creatively independent, are they still indie? Or if a game, I don't know, if a studio is taken over but is still creatively independent, are they still indie? So it's definitely difficult because people look at you in a different way and they go, well, you must make little tiny games that are very small, maybe graphically aren't quite up there, and you expect to be on, say, Xbox Live Arcade or something instead of being, you know, a standalone PC game. So it can be a curse, but at the same time, it is also a blessing in what it actually is, which is you're a studio that has complete creative freedom to do whatever the hell you want and create something that's totally different and out there. So it is definitely a combination of things.
Hi, my name's Ed Key.
My name's Lawrence Russell.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Savery.
My name is Chris DeLay.
Hi, my name's Hugh, and I'm indie.
And I am indie.
I'm indie.
And I am indie.
And I'm indie.
well, nobody knows what an indie is, do they? Nobody's ever defined it properly. I don't think anybody ever will define what indie actually is.